Fun.
Yay. So let's eventually begin our first research talk for Parn.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming here today, and also thank you to everybody who is going to be watching this in the future. Before we start our presentation, we're just going to do
The meeting.
um, so first, Parn includes people from many different lands all over Turtle Island, including St. Catharines, the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people; Barrie, the traditional home of the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi; London, the traditional home of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenapehoik, and Ottawandaron. We also welcome people from Winnipeg, located on Treaty Number 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Inawak, and Nisinuak, Dakota Oyate, and Dene people, and the birthplace of the Métis Nation and the heart of the Métis Nation homeland. Also, Kingston, the traditional home of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. Toronto, traditional home of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee. Hamilton, the traditional home of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas of the Credit. And finally, North Bay, traditional home of the Nipissing and Anishinaabeg Nation.
Sorry, remove this. We acknowledge that these lands and people have been colonized and sorry, people have been colonized and harm has been caused. We are aware that we live on unceded territory, land that was taken from indigenous people without their permission and knowledge. We are also aware of the history of residential schools and other ways the past governments used to destroy the indigenous people and their ways of living. We all have responsibilities in learning about traditional lands we live on and the treaties, histories, and cultures of indigenous people with whom we share this land. We are also responsible to learn about the strengths and gifts of all indigenous and Métis communities today and for future generations. We are all responsible to take care of Mother Earth and to make sure we leave her gifts for future generations. We are entirely grateful for this land, for the use of this land. We have gathered to work, play, and celebrate together, as so many people have before. We are forever grateful for the beautiful seasons that bring us wonder, and for the trees, the leaves, the birds, the sky, and all that has been created for us. Parn is committed to working together towards reconciliation and toward a better relationship with Indigenous people. In Parn, we are also working together to make sure everyone's voice is heard and included, that everyone's ideas are valued and shared, and that everyone knows they are important. We commit to bringing we commit to bring the principles of reconciliation and collaboration to our work and play, and to help shape the world toward a brighter future.
So in addition to our land acknowledgement, we're also going to go over our expectations for creating safe and inclusive spaces. We lay these down at the beginning of everything that PARN does. We develop the following ground rules to help create a safe and inclusive space, which we follow during all PARN activities. So our first expectation is that everyone's voice matters. Feel free to speak up. You won't get in trouble for sharing your voice. That being said, because we are here to do a presentation today, we do ask that you kind of hold on to your questions until the end. If you want, you can say them in the chat, but we might not get a chance to address them until we get to the end of our presentation.
Number 2, take a break when you need one and use the space how you need. Feel free to turn off your camera or step away if needed.
Number 3 is to respect the accessibility needs of others when possible. So for example, we're going to try and make sure that the text that we're using is large and high contrast, and we're also going to try and make sure we limit the background noise while we're speaking. Number 4, we're also going to try and use accessible language. Do ask if there's anything that needs to be repeated or explained. We did try to be mindful of this while we were creating the presentation, but nobody's perfect.
Number 5, sometimes we make mistakes, so we are open to feedback to identify and correct those mistakes. Number 6, respect the confidentiality and privacy of the group members and discussions within the group. If anything is said here, we ask that everything said remains between us and nothing is said outside of this presentation.
Number 7, we are going to agree together on what we share about the group before sharing outside the group. Things are a little bit different here because this is a presentation and we are recording it. So we may share this recording a little bit more broadly, but we will try to make sure that we're all on the same page about where we're sharing this, and that everybody is comfortable with that before we do that. Number 8, we want to be open, honest, respectful, and not judgmental in all discussions and interactions with other group members.
And number 9, promote a safe and supportive environment. This includes no discrimination, intimidation, taunting, harassment, or bullying.
With all that said, we're now going to get into our main presentation about research and advocacy. I'm Danny Pryke.
And I'm Julie Mead.
So we're going to start by saying a little bit about who we are.
So I'm Julie. I completed my social service worker diploma with honors in 2019. I completed the Bachelor's of Social Work with distinction. I graduated last night. I am studying a master's in social work at York University in September of 2025. And I currently work as a research assistant with Race and Disability Canada. Danny?
Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm Danny. So I completed my Master's of Social Work in September of 2024, and I also work as a disability support staff in recreation programs in my area. I'm really passionate about support that respects the person being supported. And I also completed a research project to learn a little bit more about what people who were labeled with intellectual disabilities wanted from support. A quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. First, Julie is going to talk a little bit about her story, some advice, and some lessons that she's learned. Then we're going to do just a very brief introduction to inclusive research, just to give a little bit of context around what that is. Next, we're going to talk about my experience with inclusive research as a researcher and Julie's experience as a participant and presenter. And then we're going to close out with a couple of things that we learned through doing this project.
Thank you, Danny. So my journey into advocacy, I will be going through 3 main points. Number one, self-advocacy. I will be talking about mobility devices in school. So I'll start with that right now. Okay, so upon reflection, I actually realized I started advocating for myself in high school. I graduated high school in 2010. However, in the first semester of my grade 9 classes, to preface, just to share, I do have a walking disability, so I cannot walk very far. And I kept arriving to class late and out of breath. So I first advocated to my parents, saying I think it's time to get a mobility device, and I first tried a cane. However, I was still very tired driving to class. So then I advocated to my parents and the school about the potential use of getting a wheelchair. And I did get my first wheelchair at 14. I The wheelchair was very helpful. It helped me conserve my energy and I got to class on time. Although one person did think getting a wheelchair would make me lazy because I would be walking less. However, the lessons I learned are it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to use the mobility devices. I am very grateful for the use of my cane and my wheelchair. And listen to your body because you know best. Secondly, I will discuss action-based advocacy. This will include me talking about petitions. So during a class in grade 10 actually, I learned about what petitions were. So I ended up creating a petition the next day to advocate for the school to install accessibility buttons. Since I was using a wheelchair, I kept having to manually open the door, or I had to rely on classmates and teachers to open the door, and I didn't really feel independent. So that really started my advocacy journey. And afterwards, by the time after I advocated for the school to install a key for the elevator because the elevator kept breaking down, and I wanted to limit this usage for students that actually require needing the elevator. A lot of students that didn't need the elevator would use it and it would keep breaking down. Although accessible buttons weren't installed when I was in high school, by the time I was in grade 12, a key was made for the elevator. So those that had a key only had access to use the elevator. So lessons I learned in this were be open to learning different advocacy techniques and try the technique regardless of whether or not it may work, always try. And like I said, I started advocating for in the school in grade 9, and by the time I got to grade 12, there was a key installed. So be patient. Lastly, we have education. In my experience, society's assumption of my capabilities have influenced my self-esteem. However, thanks to my family and friends' support, I continue to surpass those societal expectations. Like I said, I have earned a diploma. I've in social services. I've earned a degree in social work, and I was accepted into a master's program. So for my lessons I learned, really listen to those that have your back and want you to succeed. However, you may come across people that don't believe in you, and if that occurs, use that to motivate yourself to keep moving forward. Next.
Would you also like to share some of your other advice as well?
I think there's one more slide. Next slide, I think.
Yeah, this is the second slide.
Okay, perfect. So, my advice for others that may want to start advocating or so two main points. The first point is networking. I truly learned this within the last year. Networking is great. So my advice would be to share your story if you're comfortable. And you can do this by verbally talking about your story, writing your story through art, whatever you are comfortable with. Share your story and thoughts with community, social media, again, if you're comfortable. Also, message other disabled people, advocates, and allies. For example, in November, I messaged Sarah Gemma on Instagram. She was a parliament member. She is also disabled and an advocate. And although I messaged her in November, she actually replied to me last week. So in that, I learned share your story, network, be patient, and do not give up. So next we have education. Learn about other people advocating, learn their techniques and what got them there. Learn what groups you can join. For example, when I arrived at my university 4 years ago, I joined a number of groups, and you really get to know other people. And lastly, find ways to build your self-confidence. I want to stress that this is a lifelong journey. People will have their ups and downs, but some tips I have are, again, build your support system of those that See who you are and your potential. See what supports are available to you and to utilize those supports. Find ways to present your true self. So your support system should be people that cheer you on. So something to keep in mind. Another way to build your self-confidence is find a passion and hobbies. For example, I love social work, and so I'm always trying to do things within social work. And I think it's very important for everyone to realize that we tend to be more self-critical of ourselves than ours. So it's okay to just take a deep breath and remind yourself that you're doing great things, and honestly, fake it till you make it. Danny?
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing all that advice, Julie. So now I'm just going to quickly touch on what is inclusive research. So, one very quick definition of inclusive research is that it includes people who are labeled with intellectual disabilities as more than just the subjects of research. This means that when researchers do this research, it's very important that they work with the people who are participating in the project rather than just thinking of them as sources of information. There are quite a few different ways that people can be involved. They might be the ones making decisions about what the project is about. They can be research assistants who help to analyze the data, or they can make decisions about how the project is done. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the language that I've chosen to use with this project. You may see on this slide, and in a few other places, I have represented the people that chose to participate in this project as people who are labeled with intellectual disabilities. This is meant to recognize that there are a lot of different language choices that people use. Some people prefer people first language. So for example, like person with an intellectual disability, while others prefer labeled person language, which reflects how the different diagnostic labels that are imposed on people might be done in a way that the people who live with those labels don't agree with. So not all people who are considered to be labeled with intellectual disabilities understand themselves to have a disability, and they really don't like language that identifies them as such. So here I've tried to use language that is respectful to all of these different preferences, but I know that the language that we use is really, really important. So I just said that bit about how, inclusive research involves working with people. But here's just a quick kind of little comparison between traditional research and inclusive research. So during traditional research, the researcher or the academic is completely in charge of every single decision about the project. In contrast, during inclusive research, it's really important to find ways to share power with the people who are participating in the project with you. This can look different depending on the project, but as a researcher, it's important to be thoughtful about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Is there a way to involve the people who are participating in the project with what you're doing? It's important to try to notice when you're trying to take control and think about when it's possible to share power instead. I would say that another key difference is that when someone is doing traditional research, researchers often use academic jargon when they talk about or share information about the project, which makes the information really, really inaccessible. One reason this might be is because they might be drawing on pre-made templates that make assumptions about how information about research projects should be presented. Instead, when doing an inclusive research project, it's really important to rethink the way that information is presented and the templates that people use, and do your best to use inclusive language when making documents or explaining the project. It's also really great if you can get feedback about revised documents that you're using when you're doing an inclusive research project. I learned about this actually during Parnes Research Camp that we did a few months ago. I found it really impactful because there was actually a session about this, and people in the audience pointed out that there was a lot of room for improvement, even on the better, more inclusive documents that the presenter had created. So going a little bit more specific into the project that I did for my master's thesis, um, I work as a disability support staff for recreation programs in my city. As I've done this job, I've noticed a couple of things. One, staff sometimes don't really seem to think about what the people being supported might want when they are providing support. And two, when we are trained to be disability support staff, we don't really learn from the people who are being supported about how we should do our job. So, a solution to this is to learn from the people who receive support because they are the experts because of their experiences. So, we need to learn from people who receive support about what they want and what they need. And we also need to find a way to make sure that staff learn about what people have to say about this. So I kind of mentioned the main problem, staff not knowing what people need, and the main solution, which is going to people to learn about what they need. But there's a real bridge in between those things about how you go about doing that. So a very quick overview of what this process looked like. I led the series of focus groups and one set of individual interviews where I worked with the people who chose to participate in this project to create a series of infographics. During the first session, we talked about what people liked and didn't like about support, and what kind of infographics we should make. Um, During the second session, we reviewed what we talked about, and we added more points that we wanted to touch on. And we also talked about what the infographics should look like. And then during the third session, I presented some drafts of the infographics, and everybody gave me feedback about what needed to be changed. Julie, if you'd like to share your perspective on how you got involved in this.
Yes, thank you. So why did I get involved? I was really excited that Danny was also a social work student. So that piqued my interest for sure. Being involved with the project really has boosted my own confidence. I started public speaking with Danny, and I've done multiple speaking engagements with them, and I've done some on my own, some with other individuals. It kind of snowballed from our first conference. For me, I think the project went really well. However, an obstacle I did come across was being in social work and also disabled myself. I had a really hard time not interfering with the focus group because I found myself wanting to advocate for the other participants often. So that was one challenge.
Now we're going to go ahead and share the infographics that came out from doing this. So here we have the first infographic that we made. The title is Communication Keys, Do's and Don'ts for Providing Support for Individuals with Disabilities. This language of individuals with disabilities is what the group decided on and they felt most comfortable with. We have by Alan McGrath, BJB, Emma, Grim Reaper, Jessica, and Jewel. Alan chose to be credited by his full name. Everybody else chose different pseudonyms in order to take credit for their work. So our first major infographic here is the need for balance and support. I feel like it's kind of like a seesaw where they either help you too much or not at all. Julie, would you like to share your thoughts on this one?
Yes, so like I mentioned, I do have a physical disability, and I noticed this balance, I noticed this seesaw often. I find that people see my disability and think, oh my goodness, I need to do everything for her. Or they want me to be so independent that they don't want to do anything to assist me. And like the title says, there needs to be a balance. Sometimes I may be very independent, and other times I may need some support.
So, kind of building off of what Julie was just saying, we also have this second infographic, which is do not do it for me, do teach me how it's done, do not help without asking first, and do communicate to learn what people's needs are. And this is really just about making sure that people are getting consent before they jump in to help people with things, and also allowing for that skill building piece. People talked about how they felt like if people just did things for them all the time when they were younger, when they were older, they felt like they didn't really know how to do things and that that was a real problem for them. Would you like to build on anything here, Julie?
Yes, I would say that my parents really would teach me to do a lot of things. And then if I couldn't do it after trying many times, then they would assist me. But that really helped me gain a lot of independence. And it's at the point now where my parents want to jump in to help me, and I'm like, I got it, I'm fine. So, because I learned how my body operates and I learned little tricks to do things independently with the disability I have.
Next, we have do not ignore me, do not brush me off. Do pay attention to what people want to communicate. Do find ways to communicate with non-speaking people, and do recognize when people are doing well. A lot of this came about because people talked about how sometimes they would try to get help from support staff, but they would just be ignored, or they would be told that, well, we don't think you need help with that, and they would just get brushed off. And that was a pretty big issue that came up quite a few times. And so the antidote to that would be to be make sure that you're paying attention to people. Anything you would like to add on this one, Julie?
Yes, so do not ignore me. Whether you're disabled or able-bodied, we all deserve to be treated with dignity. So don't ignore anyone, please. Um, and then I'm very passionate about the last one. Do recognize when people are doing well. Um, for example, I've been underestimated so much at school, and I feel like I'm finally getting recognition for the hard work I've put into school. So it's okay to say, good job, you worked hard for this. Even for the little things, I remember I learned to ride a bike at 10, and typically, well, two-wheeler at 10, but a lot of my classmates were learning a lot younger, but it's okay to do things at your own pace. Just try not to compare yourself to others, but rather compare yourself to your past self. And I'm sure your past self is so proud of you right now.
Our next infographic here is do not put disabled people into a box. Instead, do work with people to find ways of doing things that work for them. Do get to know the person as a person, including their interests, and do give people the freedom to choose what to do. Overall, like this was kind of because some people said that they felt like people didn't really see them beyond their disability. Like they only really seemed to care about the aspects of them that related to their disability rather than getting to know them as a whole person. Julie, would you like to, build on this one as well?
Yes, so even if someone has the same disability, it doesn't mean those two people's lives are intertwined. There's a lot of other things that impact a person and their disability. So, although, yeah, just don't put this in a box. We're all also individuals, and just for the do give freedom to for people to choose what they want to do. Again, like I said, um my school didn't think I can do college, but I chose to go to college, and now I'm going to pursue a master's degree. So I think disabled people should definitely have the autonomy to pursue what they want. Thanks.
Here we have do build a rapport by getting to know the person at their pace. Do not take it personally if people are guarded around you. Do have fun and do not take yourself too seriously. And this one came about because people were sharing about how sometimes if they had had bad experiences with staff previously and they felt like they needed time to warm up to people, the new staff would get angry with them or get offended because they weren't opening up right away or they didn't trust them right away. And so this one is to really remind staff that depending on the situation, you might be coming into their home, like you need to let them set the pace, not just assume that you have control over how quickly you can get to know them. And with do have fun and do not take yourself too seriously, this is kind of about um, being willing to be flexible and not always being very serious and scowling all the time, that kind of thing. Julie, is there anything you would like to add?
For the last 2 points, do have fun and do not take yourself too seriously. I am a very sarcastic individual. It's a great tool to break the ice when meeting individuals. And I find that when I'm making jokes, a lot of people are scared to laugh. But again, disabled people are human. I personally think disabled people are very funny. It's okay to have fun. We are disabled. Everyone goes through tough times, but we also do enjoy life. So it's okay to laugh with us. Yeah, thanks.
Here we have do not treat disabled youth, teenagers, or adults like babies or children. Do avoid using baby talk and do not talk down to people. This was something that like everybody talked about as being like super, super aggravating when people would make assumptions that they couldn't understand things, so they would talk down to them or they would use baby talk with them, which everybody hated. Nobody liked that. Um, I'm sure you would like to share your thoughts about this, Julie.
Yes, as Danny's aware, this one is another one I'm very passionate about. I being disabled, I find a lot of strangers will look at me as if I'm a child. For context, I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I also look a lot younger than my age. So again, that adds to the infantilization of being treated young. Um, and it's honestly very demeaning. For example, me and Danny were doing a conference one day, and I saw a neighbor. I told the neighbor, "Oh, I have a conference tomorrow," and then my neighbor's like, "Oh wow, good job!" And it really under undermined my autonomy and my skills and my education and even my confidence of doing public speaking. Part of me wanted to say, yeah, have you done a conference? Um, but disabled adults are still adults. So please treat us like adults. Um, because talking to us like babies is, it honestly will make you look silly. Yeah, do not do that.
And we also have do show respect for people's needs, do communicate about stressful situations in advance if possible. So an example would be warning someone with sensitive hearing before testing a fire alarm is a way of showing respect for their hearing sensitivity. So this was something that came up quite a bit in terms of just kind of thinking about what different people's needs might be based on what you already know about them. Like one participant had sensitive hearing and he talked about like how much it really, really, really upset him when people didn't think about how things like fire alarms would affect him or like, fireworks if they're out somewhere and there's fireworks and people don't tell him ahead of time, like that really stresses him out. So he really wanted people to be considerate about what his needs were based on like what you might know about him in this specific case, having really sensitive hearing. Is there anything you'd like to add to this one, Julie?
Yes, just to echo what I said earlier, disabled people we're aware we have disabilities. It's not a secret to us. So we know what is best for us, but we also know what may trigger or be sensitive to us. So communication is so important. Just have a conversation and give the disabled individual the opportunity to share their needs because they know best.
Here we have do respect people's property, do educate yourself on what is and isn't accessible, and do communicate ahead of time about barriers. So this one kind of came about because people were talking about how people would plan things and then they would get there and the organizers had zero idea that what they had done was inaccessible. Or kind of almost the opposite of that, an organizer is organizing something and they think that there's a barrier and they assume there's no way around it, so they don't actually talk with the person, and there definitely could have been a way for them to be involved if they hadn't assumed that that there was no way to overcome it. So this is really about like communicating with the person and learning about accessibility needs ahead of time so that people can be included in all kinds of events rather than either not noticing that things are inaccessible or assuming that those things can't be overcome. As far as respecting people's property, I think sometimes staff kind of just assume, oh, it's fine if I just go into this person's bag, I'm just grabbing their lunch, I'm just doing whatever. But something that people said was that it was really important to them that they were able to have ownership over their things and not just have staff go through all their stuff all the time whenever they wanted. Um, so just kind of thinking about that other people's things are other people's things, and staff don't just automatically have the right to go through their things at any moment. Is there anything you'd like to add, Julie?
Yes, so for all three actually. So for the property, I'm sure you wouldn't like someone looking through your belongings without your permission. So we ask that you give that same courtesy to disabled people and the people that you're working with. Um, sorry. yeah, it's their property, simply ask. And that also goes for wheelchairs and canes. I notice a lot of people, like bystanders or able-bodied people, will simply grab someone who's a wheelchair thinking they're helping them. But to the disabled person, that's kind of like grabbing their arm, because our wheelchair or canes or walkers, whatever our mobility may aid may be, that's an extension of who we are. And you never know if, for example, the brakes are on the wheelchair, or if you touch the cane, maybe the cane is positioned in a way that is supporting the disabled person's balance. Again, the disabled person knows what works for them, and a lot of disabled people, in my experience, will communicate if they would like assistance. And you could always just ask, hey, would you like assistance, rather than jumping to assist. For the educate yourself on what is inaccessible. Again, disabled persons, the experts. For example, a lot of us will know what stations don't have elevators, and we can kind of plan ahead of time. Oh, this station doesn't have an elevator, so we need to get off at this station and either walk or roll to another station or catch a Uber. So, and also on Google Maps, you can see what is accessible. There's a lot of great apps as well. We have access to the internet, use it, and do communicate about barriers ahead of time, instead of saying, oh, you can't come because there's no elevator. How about we adapt the space so everyone is included in that space and doesn't feel left out? We shouldn't have to choose between going somewhere and whether or not we need to worry about bringing our mobility aids.
Next, we have do not assume. Do not make assumptions about what people can and can't do. Do not assume that things that will work for one person will work for another. Instead, communicate with the person to learn what they are comfortable with and able to do, and do respect the knowledge that disabled people have about their own bodies and minds. This one is like huge, 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 huge. And I know Julie has a lot to say about this. Would you like to jump in?
Sure, this is another passion slide, if you will. Again, going back to education being put into essential courses and getting A's and being told to go to a certain program, and instead graduating college and university with honors and getting into a master's. I feel like I'm always having to prove myself to people, and that doesn't only go for my academics, my school. That also goes to when I'm at the gym. A lot of individuals will assume that, oh, I can't do any of the weightlifting, or I can't walk on the treadmill for too long. But again, you don't know my body. I know what I'm capable of. So don't assume. Um, yeah, communication is so important, and if you want to learn about someone because you want to see if they do want help, just ask. They may say yes, thank you, or no, thank you, I got it. And I've said both multiple times. Also, I just want to add that a lot of disabled people, our disability, many of the time it fluctuates. So I may be really good at walking today, but tomorrow I may have a really difficult time. And there's so many factors to why that could be. So just not assuming is so important, and just communication. Yeah, very important.
Here we have do not push people's buttons, do respect when people tell you that they need space, and do give people time to cool off if they need it. This one was really important because a lot of people talked about how, they would be in a situation where maybe they're feeling a little frustrated, a little angry, and they would try to communicate that they need some time or space, but staff would kind of like follow them or keep trying to talk to them. And then from there, they would get really, really angry, and then they would get in trouble because of that. And they felt really frustrated because they felt like they were being told that they were the bad guy when if there had been better communication, if they had been given time to cool off, none of that would have happened. So, this is just kind of something really important for staff to keep in mind in terms of, you don't need to keep talking to people when they're upset. You can just let them have some cool off time. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Julie?
Just real quickly, I know that many people will prefer having time to cool off, whether you're disabled or not. Even giving time to little children to cool off is amazing. Adults, older adults. So I think this goes around the board. So just give the same respect to disabled individuals to also have time to decompress, relax, take a breather, get water. Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
And then our final infographic is do show kindness and compassion, do provide emotional support, and do try to understand where people are coming from. And this is just kind of what people wanted to see from staff. In particular, the trying to understand where people are coming from. People really wanted staff to try to come at them from a place of empathy and like not assume that, they're trying to be rude or trying to be intimidating, just kind of trying to be kind and show care for the people that they're working with. Anything you'd like to add, Julie?
Yes, as you were saying that, I got a thought in my mind. I know for me, I have a really, really hard time accepting help because my dad and mom really taught me to be independent. So yeah, it's just so important to communicate and understand where people are coming from because although we may ask for a little extra help sometimes, it, for me at least, it's really hard to accept that help. So it's not only just to be nice, it can also help the disabled person recognize that they're not a burden. And I know a lot of disabled individuals often feel like a burden and they don't want to ask for extra help and be a burden essentially, or yeah, so just be compassionate to everyone. And something I tell a lot of people is that you can join the disability community at any time. God forbid that you get into an accident or you develop something that hinders your mobility, and if hopefully you make it to older senior age, naturally the body does get weaker. And what is that? Sorry, I'm a little anxious now. But yeah, my point is that at some point everyone's gonna need a little extra help, and we might not always want to admit that, but just be kind to everyone, and we should all be supporting each other anyways.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well put. We just have, to close things out, we just have a couple of things that we feel we learned from the project. I think the thing that I learned most while doing this is that it's really important to not try to control everything. As a researcher, you come in, you have your focus group questions, you have an idea of exactly what topics are going to be talked about, you have an idea about exactly how you're gonna make decisions about how certain things go, like in terms of like for this project specifically with the infographics, I had some ideas about how the group might um, brainstorm about the layout and things like that. Not all of this went to plan, and that's okay. And I think that that's something that's really, really important to keep in mind if you're doing an inclusive research project is that if you try to control things too tightly, then you're not really doing an inclusive research project where you're working with people. You're just doing a project where you're taking control of everything. So, as much as it can be really hard when it's a master's research project or any other kind of research project where maybe you feel a responsibility for things to go a certain way, it is really, really important to try to make sure that you really are sharing power and not just trying to force discussions to go a certain way or for the process to look the way that you think it should look when you get started.
Thank you, Danny. I will keep that in mind for when I start my research project, because I also have a hard time letting go of control. I always joke around that that's why my grades are good, because I'm always worried. Um, so what did I learn? I learned that you never know where an opportunity may come from. I simply saw that Danny was a social work student offering an honorarium, and I said, why not? And now I've been public speaking. I think we've been doing it for about a year and a half. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but yeah, just say yes, even if you're scared. Go for it.
And that brings us to our question section. I'm just going to stop the recording so that way people don't need to feel worried about having their questions on camera. Sorry, that's just that. I might have to stop recording.